Hello, thank you for joining us again. My name is Chris Meckley at ACI Aquaculture. We're going to do this episode on Scolymia australiensis. We basically have 4 different grades that we go by. Master or unique, which is the holy grail of Scolymia. Everybody wants them. Then we have the ultra grade, which are basically bleeding apple Scolys, very high contrast colored war paint Scolys, and then other Scolys that are not like the bleeding apple or the war paint, but are also very vibrant in color. Then we go back to down to the A grade Scolys, which are basically solid colors or bicolors that are still very vibrant in color, just don't command as much attention as the ultras and of course the masters or uniques. And then we go to our bottom, which is the B grade, still very nice corals, a lot less expensive than the other 3 grades, but when you break it down, the colors are still contrasting, they're just not as vibrant and as bright and as intense. For the beginner that wants a beautiful coral that's not going to cost them, the money of an A, Ultra, or Master, it's a great coral for them to start out. Once they graduate on and can afford or go with a better, higher quality Scolymia australiensis, there's plenty of them to go around. We get more B grades than we do any of the other grades, but we sell a lot of them and people still enjoy them because they have really neat, unique colors, especially when it comes to the silvers, the light purples and reds, the light purples and silver, the light purple and hunter green. They're excellent beginner corals for somebody that wants a Scolymia australiensis, but does not want to necessarily go with the price tag of one of the higher grades. Okay, now I want to talk about the basic care of a Scolymia australiensis. The biggest misconception about a Scolymia is the fact that they really do not like water temperatures above 77 degrees long term. Most of the time when they're put in an aquarium environment where the temperature is that high, is higher than 77 degrees, over a period of time, the coral cannot control its metabolism to the point where it speeds up too fast. And I've seen, in a lot of cases, beautiful, vibrant, gorgeous corals that have gone from, some of the best looking corals I've seen to bleach and die in a very short period of time because they end up expelling their zooxanthellae because of stress from the higher temperatures. I recommend for anybody keeping a Scolymia in an aquarium to do everything they can to keep the temperatures at around 77 degrees or below. They're on a range where they have a current coming from southern Australia up through to northern Australia, which keeps the temperature even right at the coast in the mid to high 70s, low 80s at the most in the summertime. But most of the time, the majority of the year, they're into temperatures as low as in the 60s, and pretty much an average is what I like to keep my stuff at is around 76 degrees. They are found on many different terrain in the ocean. Scolymias live in what a lot of people would call dirty water. It's not dirty water, it's silty water. The water still has the same parameters as what a reef out in the outer reef has. It doesn't have nitrates, it doesn't have phosphates. It's just so silty and dirty and looks dirty from all of the currents that are running through that are stirring up the bottom continuously. So that brings me to another point. Scolymia australis is a coral that needs to be fed. It doesn't have to be fed daily. It's something I would recommend you feed, once a week. Give it a little bit of mysis shrimp. If you can feed it on a daily basis, of course, it's only going to be happier. 6 years ago, we imported what became known as the triple master Scoly. Advanced Aquarius did an article on it. Is 2 heads better than 1? And we had multiple Scolymias that came in that time that were double, triple head pieces. We only have ever seen 1 triple that was considered a master. The customer that got it weekly takes it out of the aquarium, puts it in a 10-gallon tank with a bubbler, puts phytoplankton and all kinds of other food in it and leaves it in there for at least 4 hours once a week just to make sure that it's happy. And one of the reasons why I found out about Scolymias not liking higher temperatures is because when that customer purchased it and they took it to their customer's aquarium, they kept their aquarium at 80 degrees constantly. All the other corals were doing extremely well, but 90% of what they had was from Indonesia. Temperatures in Indonesia are a little bit different than temperatures in the middle grade and southern barrier reef, where a lot of the Australian corals come that I receive. So after about 4 months of being in the aquarium, that beautiful Scolymia started losing all of its color. I got frantic phone calls from the store that purchased it from me, and I gave them my advice as to what to do to take care of it, to get it back. It took about 5 months before all the color came back in the coral, but they got the customer's aquarium temperature down, and they actually had the customer feeding the coral every single day, phytoplankton and zooplankton. It took a long time, but the coral recuperated and is still thriving to this day after 6 years of being in captivity. So when you break down Scolymias australiensis, make sure that you do feed them on occasions. Make sure you keep the temperature, 77 degrees and below. All your other corals in your aquarium are going to be happy at 77 degrees. A lot of people think that that's not true, but they will be. Consistency is the key. I've said it in the past. I say it all the time. Keep your tank consistent and your corals will be happy. We talked a little bit about the care of the Scolymias. One thing we need to touch base on is lighting. I've seen Scolymias australiensis in tanks that have a lot of very intense metal halide lighting. They're usually at the bottom of the aquarium. I recommend when you're keeping a Scolymia in your aquarium that you keep it under a lot of subdued blue lighting, or graduate it slowly to intense aquarium lighting. Usually you want to keep it on really intense lighting, like an SPS aquarium, down near the bottom, of the aquarium, so that way it's not getting too much light. Too much light will also cause a Scoly to bleach. So one of the things that is very important is they don't require very high intense lighting. In our systems over here, we run about 700 watts of ATI Blue Plus lighting over an 8-foot by 4-foot tank, and we can keep pretty much any coral long-term under that lighting. The corals seem to be very happy with it because of the fact that the ATI bulb that we use is probably the highest par content of a blue light on the market, and there's not much that doesn't like it. We found that using LEDs with them, they do well, for a short period of time, but we've always found that they end up bleaching. But again, we aren't using, some of the better quality LED lightings like Radions or AIs or some of the other high quality lights that are out on the market for an LED. Flow, I recommend every coral tank have very, very high flow in it. It doesn't matter where you are on a reef, you're going to have heavy flow. Where Scolymias come from, they have the southern currents coming up. Those currents are pretty consistent. Yes, they have high tide, low tide, slack tide, and there's times when the currents aren't very high. The technology we have nowadays with wave makers will allow you to have those conditions in your aquarium. And if you don't have the ability to do that, it's not a bad idea for you to put maybe your power heads on timers. Have one constantly going and have a couple other ones that, go to slack tide for a few hours every single day. It's not going to hurt your corals. The corals will fluff up a lot more because in the wild, the sediment's going to settle a little bit more. The light's going to become more intense because the light doesn't have to penetrate through all of the silt that could be in the water at the time. So good flow in any aquarium is always something that you want to have. When you're purchasing a Scolymia from your local fish store, make sure that the coral is expanded, the tissue is expanded and fluffy. If it's got a lot of flow in the system, you'll see it jiggling like jello. That's always a good sign when you're buying a Scolymia. If you ever see a Scolymia, no matter how beautiful it is and how intense the color is and how good the price is, if the coral is showing the teeth of the skeleton along the edges, let it sit there for a couple of days. Go back and check on it again. If you're really interested in it and the LFS knows you're interested in it and they say, you know what, it might not be the healthiest coral at this point in time. We did just receive it in. Let me sit on it for a day or two. When it puffs up, tell the LFS to give you a call and get in there and buy it. And as long as it's still puffed up when you get in there, there shouldn't be any reason why you wouldn't purchase it. When you do purchase it, like I said in the past, there's so many different ways you can quarantine or dip your corals. Whatever you dip you're happy with is what I recommend that you use. They're pretty resilient to dips. I've never had one go through a dip and have any ill effects from it, unless it was fresh water. I've had very unfortunate experiences from customers of mine that accidentally used fresh water for their dip instead of salt water because their employee got them RO water instead of salt water from their vats when they were putting them in through a dip process. And of course, there's no coral that can handle a freshwater dip for 15 minutes. It will die. So make sure you're using good clean salt water from your aquarium and your favorite dip of your choice, whatever the recommendations are, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. That way, you know, iodine is something I always recommend. For one, bacterial infections are probably the biggest killer of new corals in an aquarium. Iodine helps to reduce that tremendously. Other dips, of course, are there for parasites. The iodine dip doesn't necessarily do that. So, like I said before, use your favorite dip of choice to dip your coral. Quarantine it. Most people don't, but I recommend it. Do it for a minimum of a week before it goes in your tank. The chances of you getting something from a Scolymia is pretty slim, but there's still that chance. And when you have a lot of money invested into an aquarium, of course, the last thing you want is to get something that's going to give you problems for the future and cost you heartache, animals' lives, and the dollars that you've put into it is also a big killer and also discourages people. So the small time that it takes to quarantine an animal in a separate quarantine system can save you all that headache down the road. And once again, my name is Chris Meckley from ACI Aquaculture. I hope you enjoyed our little segment on Scolymia australiensis. Have a great day.